Hi, I'm Hombre Mundo, your one and only man of world, and this is the Zelda Universe podcast with none other than, well, me and Cody and Josh Jepson.
Woo!
This cast is going to be so Josh Jepson.
It's gonna be
Yeah,
so Josh Jepson. It's an adjective. We've decided this before the cast.
Yeah,
yeah. But what for? You decide.
Yes, it can mean
exactly.
anything.
Yeah,
I'm,
what is Sir Josh Jepson?
Well, one thing that is really Josh Jepson, in my opinion, is the idea of the next hypothetical Zelda 3DS game that is not a remake.
Yeah, that's pretty Josh
that's
Jepson, I
so
think.
Josh Jepson. Uh,
So,
Yeah.
alright, so, yeah, this cast is about Majora's Mask.
No, it's
Is that
no,
is that
it's
right?
not.
It's
No,
not?
it's
It's
absolutely
oh
not
sorry, it's
about.
about Josh Jepson. I forgot for a second. Okay,
Yeah,
okay, I'm set
yeah.
now.
those two things are
Okay.
synonymous.
So we
Right.
had A Link Between Worlds already,
Indeed.
obviously, and a lot of people are expecting Majora's Mask 3D to be the next Zelda for the 3DS, but we're gonna look beyond that, or just completely ignore it, or whatever you wanna call it, really. We're just gonna disregard that completely and move ahead to what we think is gonna be the next 3DS Zelda game, if any, right? If you look back on the DS, we did have two handheld Zelda games, but they were running on the same engine and they had a lot of similar themes.
One thing that I remember Nintendo saying when Ocarina of Time 3D came out, they were talking about making another Zelda game with that similar style, but a brand new Zelda game. And then it kind of didn't happen, and we got A Link Between Worlds instead, which is fine because that's amazing. But
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
think it would be cool for them to take that engine that they built it for, for Ocarina of Time 3D and build a brand new Zelda game in that style. Because it kind of,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
you think about it,
So,
it had kind of its own unique style, even though it was a remake of Ocarina of Time.
hmm. But so you're
Yeah.
thinking like third person,
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
classic Z targeting.
Mm-hmm. I
So
mean,
basically a 3D Zelda game
yes, exactly. A 3D
on
Zelda
the
game.
on the so now it's like super 3D, I
Yes.
guess.
Well, I will say this
So
though.
this gets confusing. It gets confusing.
I will say this though. When they came out with A Link Between Worlds, when they announced that, I was like, well, finally, it's time for another 2D Zelda game. Well,
Yeah.
they did that. Let's go back to the 3D Zelda games too, because I think it's a good. I think the 3DS is a good fit for it after playing Ocarina
Yeah.
of Time 3D.
I think the 3DS is a strong enough system hardware wise that we can have 3D games now.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the 2D games are also good, um, apart from Spirit Tracks and Phantom Hourglass, but um,
I don't know if
uh,
those really count. They're good though. They were
like,
good. I
so,
liked
Now
them.
no, but the thing
they're
is,
kind of 2D games.
they're not fully 2D or 3D. They're sort of a compromise.
2.5D.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
no,
Well, not
two and a
really.
half D
Kinda.
is when you're 2D and then something jumps out from the background, like Donkey Kong Country Returns.
Well, it fits the name 2.5D better because it plays a lot like a 2D game, but they have a lot of 3D elements as well, which is nice. But I Link Between Worlds, it had some 3D elements. I mean, the whole game was rendered in 3D,
I'll tell you what I think they're
which
gonna
is you
do.
never really.
I'm gonna tell you what I think they're gonna do, and then I'm gonna tell you what I want them to do. What I think they're gonna
Hmm.
do is adapt and change the engine that they built for A Link Between Worlds, and then build a brand new Zelda game on that same engine with a similar style. What I want them to do
Right.
is build a really, really, really awesome 2D Zelda game. Like I mean, an actual 2D graphics Zelda game. Because think about that with the level of hardware that we have now, and you see games on on like downloaded on the Wii U or better example Steam and Xbox Live, they have these really really awesome 2D games that look
Yeah.
fantastic, and I think that they should do something like that for Zelda as well.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, 2D, like A Link Between Worlds, is essentially 2D. Like, it's the same thing as A Link to the Past, except the graphics are rendered slightly differently. But
Yeah.
like from the perspective of the gameplay, everything's 2D. You can't accidentally aim your sword swing too high or too low.
Yeah.
Right.
Like it sort of it works in the same 2D constraints as the original games.
Exactly.
If you know what I mean.
Exactly. Yeah.
So and so we're getting the 2D games, and I think the 2D games are good because they offer something that the 3D games don't. Like, they're sort of got different strengths. It's not so much 3D isn't so much an upgrade.
It's really it's kind of like it's a different playstyle, right?
Yeah.
It's you get different kinds of puzzles and different kinds of exploration in 2D than you do in 3D.
Right, like Zelda's a good example of a series that made a good jump to 3D, but there's still stuff to be found into. It's the same with Mario. Like, that's why they're releasing both 2D and 3D Mario games, because they both appeal to different
Yeah.
people for different reasons.
Yeah.
And then, like, for example, Sonic appeals in 2D but not 3D because the 3D games are all bad.
Yeah. That's true.
I think that's a little bit of a unfair comparison, as the 3D Zeldas are actually good.
Yeah. I just wanted to slip in, like, making fun of Sonic.
Okay, well, I you know what? You just made a lot of people angry, even though this is a
Yeah.
Zelda fan
No, well,
site.
it's just a 3D Sonic, so it's.
Okay, all right. 2D Sonic.
I'm cool with making fun of Sonic as long as it's a 3D Sonic.
Let me ask you
Yeah,
this
yeah.
though. Let me ask you this. Personal opinions: 2D Zelda or 3D Zelda?
Yeah, that's a really.
That's hard, right?
We actually had a poll on that one of our article writers was doing.
Yeah.
Did you take that poll, Cody? Were you a good member?
Yeah, the poll, yep.
You didn't.
Yep, the poll. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, everyone, the poll, you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
But there was that question, like, do you prefer 2D or 3D Zelda? And I said I didn't actually have a preference because, I mean, my favorite Zelda games are mostly 3D Zelda games, but it's not because they were 3D games. It was because
It's just
they
because
were
they were
Well,
great
it's
games.
superior
because the 3D games usually have more time
depth.
and depth
Mhm.
put into them, because that's the idea. You know, like, because the 2D games often are just more accessible, not necessarily easier, but
Right.
more accessible for someone to come in and you say, okay, so the directions are up, down, left, and right. You press B to swing your sword. It's not like a lot of people didn't really make the jump over to Super Mario 64 or Super Mario Galaxy, which is why New Super Mario Bros. Wii, the 2D series, sells like 8 times better than the 3D games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because they're accessible. They're not as deep as something like Super Mario Galaxy, but they're a lot more accessible.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, here's gonna be my prediction, and my prediction is gonna be this exact same prediction as your prediction, Josh.
Really? Oh, I'm
They're
glad
just
that we're
gonna-
on the same
yeah,
page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
No,
Jepson.
because they did it with they've done it with a lot of games, and most recently the DS games. They just basically took the same engine and remade the game. So
Yep.
yeah, I think it's basically gonna be.
I think we will have it broken up by a Majora's Mask remake, but it will happen.
Yeah,
It'll be the next one. The next original Zelda game will probably be 2D on the 3DS.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm thinking it might be a sequel, maybe, but I'm thinking, to
Majora's
be
Mask
honest,
2.
that they want to shake things up.
Zelda 2.
Yeah.
We'll do the Final Fantasy method of naming, and be like Final Fantasy 13-3 or whatever. We'll have Zelda 2-6 or something.
It'll be Zelda 2-6, but Zelda 2-6 will actually be Zelda 2-4.
And then just like, yep, and then like Zelda 2 Revenant Wings or something. It's like a prequel.
Right. Yeah. No, I do think that they're gonna make something Phantom Hourglass Spirit Tracks-esque. There we go. In the sense that they've already used a Link to the Past as a base,
Yeah.
and then sort of made a Link between Worlds off of that. So now they're gonna do something like either Phantom Hourglass, where it's a direct sequel, and they take it like to some sort of
Mm.
alternate world, like they did with Phantom Hourglass and Majora's Mask and Link's Awakening and basically every sequel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And or they're gonna do something like Spirit Tracks, where it's sort of connected to A Link Between Worlds, but not all
Right.
that closely. And the world is still gonna be a little similar, but a lot different too. So you feel like you're
You
really
know,
exploring a new world.
you know what I hope they do? I hope they take um, Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons and come up with some sort of like child of the two on the 3DS. Because right, like 'cause
Hmm.
they recently
Yeah.
released them on
Right. Pokemon style.
yeah, exactly,
Uh-huh.
exactly. And they recently released them on Virtual Console for download. So I mean, it's not out of the question, right? And I love those games to death, and I think it would be really cool to have
Yeah.
another
Right.
game either in that same world or a similar world.
Well, and there was actually a third Oracle game planned.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Oracle of
And the
Secrets.
thing about those games though is that they're Capcom, I believe. So if something in the Oracle's world comes along, it might be not even Nintendo's
Oh yeah.
studio developed.
Oh yeah, yeah. They could have Capcom do it again, or another company outside of it. I know that Retro Studios has talked about wanting to do a Zelda game, which would be
Yeah.
fantastic. I'm not, you know, like that should happen
yeah,
actually.
Yeah.
absolutely, and that would be cool to see. And that might be something because we talked about in the last uh, cast that you were on, Josh,
Yeah.
about how Nintendo has been kind of giving out their franchises to other studios to work on,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
and they've talked about doing it with Zelda, and we have Hyrule Warriors.
Right.
That's one example. And also didn't they also get some help from like another? Wasn't like the like some Mario staff? I mean, Nintendo moves around staff a lot.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
I
a
think it
lot
was for
of
either Link Between Worlds or Skyward Sword, and they moved a bunch of staff around to help
yeah.
on the games
They've
from other
done that.
teams.
What they do a lot is get other teams either not first party Nintendo, but second party like Retro Studios. I believe they helped out. I believe Retro Studios actually helped out with Mario Kart 7 at one point.
Oh yeah, they did like one track, I
Right.
think,
Yeah.
right?
So it's stuff like that where Nintendo's sort of like here's a little bit of the game. Let's see what you got. And
Hmm.
yeah. So I mean, so they do stuff like that. They kind of shift people around and give other teams different jobs within the game.
Now I kind of want to move on a bit from the sort of like the engine and the view and all that stuff.
Okay.
I want some more like speculation,
Okay.
All
story
right. I think
speculation.
Bruce will
I
be the main
want like
character.
yeah.
There's some speculation for you.
So we've seen a lot of if you look back at the past, let's just say Twilight Princess and forward, right?
Hmm.
So with Twilight Princess, we had a kind of story heavy game, and Skyward Sword was also story heavy in a sense, and they have started to
Right.
Yeah.
explore a lot more deep story in the console, like the home console Zeldas.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the visions have changed. I think I think Spirit Tracks and Link Between Worlds are like fundamentally different kinds of games.
Hmm.
Yeah, like
Um,
they have decent storylines, but they're not that heavy, so to speak.
right. And I mean it's
You.
yeah because A Link Between Worlds was a complete like open world adventure, like pick a dungeon kind
Hmm.
of game. Whereas like some of the previous games, like Skyward Sword, it was fairly linear. It was sort of
It
the
was very
worlds were
linear, yeah.
separate. They were sort of like it was like Mario Galaxy or something, where you just go to a portal to a world, and then you go there. It's not just like one big open
You're right.
world
Right.
in the style of A Link Between Worlds or The Wind Waker or something like that.
Yeah.
And then of course like Spirit Tracks was they just who cares about an overworld where you could just take a train to the next
But the train
to
were
I
the
think that
next
the
was the
trains were
location?
most
awesome.
boring of all of the overworlds.
No, no, no. It was the best overworld.
Was it?
Okay, it wasn't the best, but no, no, no. But it was the best
Well,
transportation system
Oh, okay. I would admit
of
that,
all.
but like you go everywhere on the thing, right? There's
Okay, how
no
about this? How about this? How about we make Spirit
real
Tracks
sense.
2 and you can get off, like, you can just stop the train and jump off, like in Hyrule Field. How
I
about
okay.
mean, I
that?
guess it would be
Well,
cool.
no. How about we have Spirit Tracks 2, except there's no tracks and the train can fly?
I'm gonna be completely honest with you. When Spirit Tracks was announced, I thought you would be able to draw like the track. Like the track would be super
Right,
like magic.
because that's
Yeah, it like
that's how Phantom Hourglass worked. So
exactly.
it's yeah, which is fine. I think it's but yeah, like I'm usually harsh on Spirit Tracks. I think I just like the open world stuff better,
Hmm.
but it is a preference. Like they're sort of like that's why my favorite games are like Wind Waker, Majora's Mask, A Link Between Worlds. These like
Yeah.
open ones full of side quests and separate adventures. That's sort of my style that I like.
So do you think stuff like that will carry over into whatever's
Well,
next?
I think A Link Between Worlds was a statement. Like
Yeah.
I think it's basically saying, all right, let's cut away a lot of this stuff that was being added to the Zelda series, the linearity,
Yeah.
the focus on a narrative, you know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah, no, I think they learned a lot from A Link Between Worlds. How they could take something that's old school and renew it and make it modern and still make it work. And it's not just a
Yeah.
novelty. It works really
yeah.
great.
I mean I think in terms of graphically, I'd probably describe A Link Between Worlds as functional. Like it didn't really
Yeah.
wow in any way. It wasn't like the Wind Waker was, you know,
Yeah. It was
it was
visually
unique. It
stunning.
was interesting. Yeah, it was visually
And
stunning.
and I don't, and
Um,
in some people's eyes, visually stunning is not a good thing.
yeah, but the thing is, it's not so much the style as the way you go about it as well. Because
Yeah.
Spirit Tracks is ugly. Just it's
Well,
like I'm
there's
just
a case
annoying
to be
so many
made.
people.
There's a case to be made for that.
But
Like the
no, I'm
You just have
making
it out
fun
for
of Spirit
Spirit
Tracks, but
Tracks, don't you?
I also have a point of like Spirit Tracks and Wind Waker. They had the same style, but because they tried to translate it over to the DS, it didn't come across the same
Hmm.
way.
Yeah.
So I think
hmm,
they should cut loose from trying to remake console things on the handheld graphics wise and that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Well,
I think they should
I think it's different for the 3DS because the 3DS is just so much more powerful, right? And you can have a
well
really good looking 3D game on the 3DS. I mean, obviously it's not going to look as good as the Wii U, but
yeah, I mean the thing is like handhelds are usually a couple generations behind the consoles in terms of graphical power, which
yeah.
since Nintendo is really bad at console power, it's probably about the same as the Wii because the Wii was the same as the GameCube. But so you can probably port over most of the graphical styles nowadays from old Zelda games, but I think it's like I don't know, trying to copy a style hasn't really worked out as well as the original when they've tried it. Like
yeah.
Spirit Tracks and
Well,
Phantom Hourglass wasn't quite the same as the Wind Waker. A Link Between Worlds was, not quite a link to the past.
right, but with the DS, I mean, the DS is not as powerful as a GameCube, but a 3DS is. The 3DS could easily do something like the Wind Waker's art style, I think, looking good, and it could do Twilight Princess art style, and it would look good. And we've already seen that it can do Ocarina of
Twilight Princess
Time
art
and make
style
it look.
never looks good.
Hmm.
No, it
Okay,
does.
I should
Twilight
I
Princess
should
looks
stop
great.
picking fights and everything.
You really should.
Um,
Everybody already hates you, Cody.
I know, I know. It was great. All the comments on the last video, they were like,
That was so
"Go."
Josh Jepson.
It was so Jepson.
Oh man.
No, but yeah, I think just graphically, like, what would you like to see as a graphical style for a brand new
I mean,
game.
I talked about it a little bit earlier, but I think a really, really, really good looking 2D Zelda, 2D graphic Zelda would
Right.
look really good.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the thing is, like A Link Between Worlds, I think it was hampered a bit by having to be a remake of A Link to the Past. Like I think there are 2D, you can do
No.
2D in a way that's much more visually appealing.
Yeah. No. What they
Like
did, and here,
Rayman Legends or this kind of thing. They look amazing
yeah, they
Yeah,
look
as
great.
perfect
2D
example.
games.
Perfect example.
Yeah.
They've got a brilliant style. They're unique. Whereas A Link Between Worlds, obviously, it's a really great game, but the graphic style was, it,
It was okay.
yeah,
Like and it's at sometimes it did look good, but and I've said this before. And now it's my time to pick a fight, but I've said it before, so I think people are okay with it because I haven't received any hate comments. But
well,
I
you're not
think
as
they were just being
Jepson as I
lazy
am.
about it. I
Yeah,
think Nintendo was just all right. Here's a link between past and
A Link Between
a
Paths. Yeah,
link to the past.
A
Now
Link to
make
the
it
Pasts.
3D, and they made it 3D, and then they called it a day. It's like, yep, we made it 3D. We're done.
Well, I think I think it was necessary in a way because the point of the remake is that they're cashing in on nostalgia, so they can't just give it a new art style. So
Well,
I
they
can
can. No, no, no.
understand
Yes, they
why.
can. Have you seen that? You've seen the picture that floated around years before A Link Between Worlds was announced,
Yep.
where they had this HD A Link to the Past thing, and it was like raining and Wind Waker. It was Wind Waker Link instead of regular Link, I think. But he was like just outside his house and was looking around, and it was like raining, and it was like it looked so gorgeous. You've
Yeah.
seen this image. We're
Yeah.
gonna show it right. We're gonna show it right here. That image. They could
Yep.
have done that, and people
Yeah.
would have
So I think they
absolutely
could have
freaked
done more,
out,
but I think they
and
might
it
have
would have
used
worked.
the remake as sort of an easy escape on that
Yeah,
front.
like I
Like
said, they were just being
we're not saying it
lazy.
looks bad. We're just saying
It didn't look great.
it could be so much better. It's not notable in any way
Yeah.
Right.
apart from some of the drawing stuff that had its own art
Yeah,
style,
the
but
drawing stuff looked great, I think.
but otherwise when you compare it to the crispness and uniqueness of stuff like Rayman Legends,
Yeah.
Hmm.
um,
It would have been.
it just
It would have
doesn't
just
stack up.
been. It would have just been 10 times better if they took A Link to the Past and redrew everything and made it look all really fancy and nice, and not tried to
Yeah,
make it 3D like you guys are saying.
Yeah.
yeah, and it's the exact same thing with the new Super Mario Brothers games.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think
Like they don't look bad, but they don't look spectacular or anything.
Right, but I think that it's fine with New Super Mario Brothers because it is um, that's not a remake on the level that A Link Between Worlds was. Like A Link Between Worlds actually
Right.
changed a lot of stuff. Like the whole system of how everything worked was swapped around by being able to walk across walls and things.
Well,
Whereas New Super Mario Brothers is sort of a continuation of old like Super Mario Brothers 3.
I think the important distinction
Hmm.
here, though, is A Link Between Worlds is not a remake. Like, as much as people want to say it is because it takes place in the same world as A Link to the Past, they were trying to promote it as not a remake. And
Right.
Right, well, it's a
But it was
sequel.
it was kind of like a semi
it,
remake.
it,
I mean,
it the
it's
thing
more of a remake as a sequel than any other Zelda sequel has
the
been.
thing is about it
If
though
that
is
makes
that
sense.
it most definitely did start off as a straight up 1-to-1 remake of A Link to the Past. It started that way. Because
Right,
I mean,
but
Miyamoto even mentioned
yeah,
he wanted to potentially do a remake of A Link to the Past on the 3DS, and I think that's probably right around the same time when they probably started making it, and it just kind of
yeah,
over time changed into something new, and so that they marketed
right.
it that way too.
So yeah, but the thing is, compared to other Zelda games, like there have been sequels before, but Zelda 2 was in a completely different world to Zelda 1. Majora's Mask was in a completely different dimension to Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
Spirit Tracks was like in a completely different world to Phantom Hourglass. So like sequels previously in the Zelda series have been they're sequels in that it's the same link for people who care about the timeline, but they're not sequels in any real sense
Yeah.
of this is the same world and you've got
Yeah, and
more stuff to
even
do.
even in Twilight Princess, which was very heavily based in Ocarina of Time,
Yeah.
had the overworld and all the dungeon stuff. There were some similarities. Like you had a thing at the bottom of Lake Hylia, and you had a thing on top of Death Mountain,
Hmm.
and they were all like in the same kind of directions from the center of the map, but it was
Right.
still radically different. Whereas A Link Between Worlds was nearly identical, like overworld
Right.
wise.
It was a
Uh,
frame for frame reproduction of the overworld with remix dungeons and
Yeah.
some other stuff. And
yeah,
they renamed the Dark World and hoped that we wouldn't notice. Uh,
They didn't change enough. I think that's what it is. I think they didn't change enough,
yeah.
but they didn't. They changed too much for it to be a remake, and they didn't change enough for it to be a
yeah.
sequel. So it's kind of like this weird in between thing.
Right.
It's
Which
it's just it's a
yeah.
sequel that feels remake-y.
Yeah. I'm. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
It's
that's
so
really
Josh
Josh
Jepson.
Jepson.
That's so Jepson.
But
Um.
I actually I wanted like I wanted you to talk about story stuff before we stop talking about story stuff and still talked about other stuff. So let's move back to that because that's what the listeners want. They want to have
Right.
speculation, like
Better
villains.
villains.
Vati, Ganon,
I liked
No. Get rid of them
Bruce.
I
all.
liked Vati. I liked Ganon. I
Yeah.
didn't like Yuga.
No. Okay. So
Oh,
it
really?
depends. Well, yeah. A lot of these villains are one-off Saturday morning cartoon villains who are like, I'm going to destroy the world and bring back Hitler. Ha ha ha. Like just because they think it's funny. Like I think there are better stories that have been told of villains in the Zelda series. Examples to look to are the Wind Waker. It's Ganondorf, but it's a different Ganondorf than the ones in other games that are just sort of like, boogity boo, I'm the villain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
In the Wind Waker, he had a story, he had a past, he wanted to bring back Hyrule, which had been flooded. Like in Majora's Mask, the villain Skull Kid it was a story of friendship and loss and all this kind. It was like a story of personal development.
I just think
mm,
Like they've had good villains, but the one-off, like I call them Saturday morning cartoon villains, haven't really
see,
evoked any kind of emotion.
and that's exactly what I'm
in
talking
me.
about. And I think the handheld Zelda games are the ones that suffer from it the most. There's been a couple. Let's see. Vati, I think on the handheld is one of the few that I think actually I felt was okay. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like he
yeah,
had a real like huge purpose compared to some of the other villains in Zelda, but he was cool, so it didn't matter.
exactly. I think
Yeah.
that he has a lot of. It's kind of like well, Girahim is more of a mix, kind of between Skull Kid
Yeah,
and Vati. I
Right. I
feel,
mean,
but
Girahim was pretty cool. He wasn't technically the main villain. They pulled a bait and
right.
switch again, but I
I'm tired of that, by the
for
way.
like the fifth time, like
Well, not
like with A Link to
entirely.
the
Not
Past, or
entirely.
like with the Oracle games, or like with Twilight Princess. It was a. I would prefer if Ganon didn't pop up at the end and say I was the villain all along in any of these.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I prefer if the villains just, in their own right, had a purpose. They weren't just like, I serve the
yeah.
master.
Yeah,
And that's what I think they did really well with Yuga because it was sort of like a mix. Like you started out, spoilers by the way, you started out thinking it was just, oh, here's Yuga, and it's probably like this is the Ganondorf of Lorule, and he's gonna resurrect Ganon because that's
which
obviously
was
what's gonna
really cool.
happen.
I
Mm.
thought that was really
Right, but
cool.
then they
And
were
then
like,
spoiler alert.
yeah, but then yeah, exactly. They did this thing where Ganon came back to life, but he was kind of like just an empty shell. Like he was kind of a zombie almost. Like he was, yeah. It was just, and Yuga could sort of merge with him,
I okay. I
and that
then
was really cool.
Yeah, that was really cool. And then the plot twist happens at the end of the game that I don't know if I should spoil on
Yeah.
the cast, but it
Yes, you
kind
should.
of it.
No, well,
We'll
I
dance
think
around it,
the
but
end game spoilers we might leave for a little while. We can
No,
spoil
we
the
actually had a podcast spoiling everything already, so
well,
it's fine.
still for the viewers that haven't played the game, first of all, stop listening, and go play the game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
go away.
but it just it was a bait and switch again, and it was, oh, who is the real master behind the evil?
Yeah.
And I'm tired of seeing it. It's happened too many times in Zelda, and it's almost too predictable at this point.
Right. It's
And
like one of those things where, like, I wonder when the plot twist will be. It's Twilight Princess ruined a brilliant villain.
Oh, I was just about to bring that up. I'm so glad you
No,
said that,
they did not. They didn't ruin him.
I'm sorry,
no, they didn't.
But Zant was so badass through the whole game, and then you get to the end-ish, and things start changing up, and Ganon appears, and he becomes this crazy whatever, and then it wasn't cool anymore.
It was good. No, because here's the thing that nobody gets is that's part of his character. Sant was only badass because if you look at his backstory, he was this kind of like angry wimp who wished for power, and then he got it through Ganondorf. Then he would act all badass, like, now I'm all
like that. He could have just gotten power through the Triforce or the power of Side Rule, which is another
Side Rule.
No, but he did. No, look. It made perfect sense.
Could have been written out, and the story of Twilight Princess would have been.
No. Here's what you should know. I agree with you that he shouldn't have been shoehorned in at the end. Okay. Yeah. I completely agree with that. But he was perfect as a sort of a backstory element.
All right. Okay.
We were shown what happened with Ganondorf in the Child
timeline. Let me
right?
be the middle ground here and rephrase what we're all trying to say. Twilight Princess was a fantastic game. The villain was good. The plot twist was good. It was more that we were slightly disappointed by the fact that Zant wasn't this badass when he could have been.
No, that's exactly what you're not supposed to be, because he isn't a badass at heart. He's a coward at heart. That's thoroughly explained.
This sounds like fan fiction.
No, that's thoroughly explained in the cutscenes that he's kind of an angry wimp. And you see that when he gets power, right? He gets his power, and then he's acting all badass because he's thinking he's invincible. But then when you get to the end and you still defeat him, he reverts, like he gets desperate, and he reverts back to what he truly is at heart, which is like a crazy whimpering coward. And he just freaks out because he can't handle it. And I think they actually did that really well. It's just that they happened to shoehorn Ganon in.
I think they did it really well too. I agree with you. But going forward with the Zelda series, I want to see a really like a brand new, really badass villain that isn't controlled by anyone. He's just evil and sinister and dark and has a cool battle theme.
Right.
And has a purpose.
Like, has a purpose, exactly.
Like, because that's the thing. Like, you know, when I said before, Saturday morning cartoon villains or Captain Planet villains is another one I use. Because, like, they're just like, why don't we, like, crash an oil tanker into the sea so that we can kill baby seals? And, like, they don't have a purpose. They're just like, that would be evil. No one in real life considers evil to be a positive trait. They think they're doing something. They think that they've got a grand mission. It would be good to see a bit more depth.
Right, but I mean, I think Ganon or Ganondorf does that well, because Ganon and Ganondorf, like that, he's all about kind of conquest, and he has taken over Hyrule in the past, and like that's his goal, essentially, right? And you kind of had the same thing going with Yuga, who wasn't really controlled by, well, he sort of was, but sort of not really.
Right. Well, the Link Between Worlds had some good stuff. It had they had a purpose behind their actions. They had
they did. Yeah.
Not to mention spoilers because everyone left 10 minutes ago. But because their world was basically destroyed, they wanted to get it back. They wanted to fix it. That's a good reason. It made Hilda a good character. I'm not sure it necessarily made Yuga a good character because Yuga was just sort of the cackling maniac.
Well, sort of, but I think they did a good job with Yuga anyway.
It's one of those times where the villain it's not necessarily evil, because he's trying to help someone. It just so happens that he's kind of trying to screw over somebody else in the process. And when Hilda sort of kind of realizes that towards the end, Yuga doesn't, because he's crazy. What if they switched around the roles of the Triforce, and let's say for example, Ganon is the villain, and Ganon gets all of the Triforce pieces beforehand, and Link doesn't have it anymore. I'd like to see a development of you trying to get to the end of the game through that, and kind of relearning the courage outside of the Triforce, and then having to face, a 3 times more badass Ganon at the end of the game.
Well, to be honest, I've always felt that Triforce of Courage was kind of a flimsy Triforce. Like, it doesn't really give him anything. Like, or I'm not sure if it does, but it's like the power of heart in Captain Planet. It's sort of like
it's the Triforce of love.
Zelda has magic powers, and wisdom means she can make decisions better. Ganon has straight up power. Link has the ability to go and fight people, even though he's not any stronger than normal people. I mean, normal people can already do that.
It does give
Which
him
I think would make a great story,
some powers.
Yeah, I mean, if he actually had the power of heart, he'd be able to talk to animals, which would be good. So, like, the power of heart's actually better.
I think it would make for a great story for Link to kind of have to find his own courage without the power of the Triforce.
Right, more explanation of what exactly the Triforce pieces do for people. Like, I think Triforce of Courage just comes to people who already have courage. But then what extra does it grant? Because, like, wisdom, you can get extra wisdom. Power, you can get extra power. Courage, he's already got enough courage, because sometimes they get this Triforce, like, halfway through their adventure.
Yeah. Well, it does give you immunity to the Twilight Realm.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
You get turned into a wolf instead of a ghost.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So that's the thing. Just a very convenient thing.
Right, but in A Link Between Worlds, instead of a Triforce, you can do that with a bracelet. So obviously they're not too fussed about.
Actually, yeah, no, but well, yeah, I guess the bracelet. Yeah, I was trying to think, like, wait, didn't the Triforce like break him out of the wall or something? But I mean, maybe it activated the bracelet or something. I don't really know.
It's the power to activate bracelets. The Triforce of Courage power.
In a few, in both, in the past 2 handheld games, Spirit Tracks and Link Between Worlds, they've done a thing which I really like, which they've had more so human characters, or at least human-like characters, being evil, and not necessarily. It's not only like the big bad demons. So they've had Cole and Staven, or Byrne as he's called if you're from the United States.
Yeah.
And also Hilda,
right?
Who wasn't exactly evil, but she was an antagonist. Let's just say that, right?
Right.
So would you like to see? And I would definitely like to see that. Like, maybe you have the Kingdom of Hyrule, and there aren't just these like big bad demons coming. That there are actually maybe like human people. I mean, Ganondorf was human too. Like, so you have other human beings that you need to watch out for, because not all of them are like goody good and help each other out.
Right.
He was humanoid, at least. It's because the definition of human can be a tricky one, because you've got the Hylians who have ears. The Gerudo are a completely different race. The
Well, they're all
Sheikahs
human.
Have magic powers. I'm not sure if they're
all human.
Some sort of human.
They're all human.
I because you also said human-like, so it could be as long as it takes kind of a lesser being.
Yeah, I more so did that because I think like Cole and Staven. I mean, as Cole especially, he was some sort of imp. Like, he wasn't human per se.
Right.
He I mean, close enough.
Right.
Right. I think the more, because it's sort of a trope that basically the less human they look, the less intelligent they are, but the stronger they are.
Yeah.
Like that's the deal with Beast Ganon. Like, he sort of lost his scheming osity, which is a Jepson term.
Well, not Blue Ganon. Beast Ganon without the Trident of Power, yes, but not Blue Ganon.
So, like, I prefer the human versions. I prefer the Battle of Mind over the Battle of Brawn, because Link battles Braun at the end of every dungeon in every game.
Yeah.
Like fighting giant monsters isn't
Yeah,
new.
and
It's sort of like, oh, it's Monday. I'd better go fight a giant monster. That's Link's day. Like,
yeah,
Well, I mean,
and I think that goes both.
here's the thing about that, though,
Sorry, go
right?
ahead.
They've done it before, though. This exact thing that you're talking about, because I mean, even
Yeah.
way back to Zelda 2, it wasn't a human that you were fighting, but you fought Shadow Link. It was just you. You fought yourself.
Yeah.
Twilight Princess is a good example. At the very end, you're fighting Ganondorf as himself with a sword.
yeah,
Yep. And
Same with
also,
Wind Waker.
like you said before, that's something that made Vati really cool because he wasn't all, brawn until,
Well,
until the
until the
very
very
final
end.
battle when he turned into an
right.
eye.
Well, they all do that. Like, whenever you get a villain, they're always at the end. They're like, this isn't even my final form. It's like the Frieza syndrome. Like, they can't stop evolving into a new form.
Maybe
But-
a villain that uses his surroundings and his kind of like, instead of the last boss being about fighting, have it be about thinking about puzzles. Like maybe the boss throws some sort of puzzles at you.
It's Professor Layton.
Yeah.
Professor Layton's the final boss, and he's just like, he's like, I have 12 matchsticks, okay? And Link's like,
Yeah. And it's sort of like he challenged you to a chess game, and it's like an honor game, and if you win, he just gives up.
But you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, though, right?
the final boss gives you a puzzle. I can't think of that as anyone other than Professor Layton.
Well, no, you know what I'm trying to say, though, right? Have the final battle be involve more thinking than just fighting.
Yep.
I think that would be good.
All right. Well, I think we're running pretty long for one of our podcasts at the
Yep.
moment. So
Well, it was a good one,
we'll
though.
probably yeah, it was a good podcast.
It was
We had
very
lots of
Josh Jepson.
discussion. We
Yes.
made fun of Sonic. It was pretty Jepson. So if you want to be Jepsoned again, you can subscribe to us here because he is going to be a regular on our podcast. Not every week because sometimes our scheduling means that we just have like Australians instead of Americans because time zones are complicated. But he'll be here
Every so
fairly
often,
often for the podcast.
And I am
So-
excited for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Take it away, Hombre.
Yep. So that's it. Over and out.
Okay, I'll do the.
No, I just ended it right there.
Good.